All right, so now the fun begins. What we're going to do is start looking at what your competition's doing, and we're going to explore different options in terms of, are they direct competitors, are they tangentially related, or are you struggling with the status quo? And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through how we use our competitive analysis sheet to help organize some of this information and turn it into actionable insights, or at least arm us with the information we need in order to move forward. I'm going to walk you through this pretty quickly. I'm going to use the fictitious example of that RV or electric RV company. The idea is that I know this actually takes hours of time and effort, but I want to make sure you understand the process and the flow so that we can turn the information we collect into something that's extremely actionable. In this video, we're going to be focusing more on leveraging Google and other sites to kind of pull in sentiment and some base information about our competitors. But in the next couple videos, we're going to be looking at what they're using for advertising, how they're advertising, if they are, and the language and content that they use, so we can add that into our competitive analysis and using it as a reference so that we know what language is already working in market and see if there's potentially even a way for us to find differentiation in the language they have and show why our solution is better. Okay, so this sheet is available for download and there's a link below. I'm just going to kind of walk you through how we would approach one of these things. There's a couple tabs on this. I'll walk through each one, but normally we like to start off at the competitors tab. This is where I want you to start thinking about who's a competitor, and partially it's direct competitors. So for my electric RV example, there's two things that I've pulled out here. For simplicity, what I was trying to do was pull out some of my major competitors. Now, Airstream has a concept that is a concept electric trailer. It's not a real thing at this point, but it's something that they are actively working on. And I'm using that as an example of, this is a trailer that doesn't have a conversion kit, but it's still effectively the same concept. It's an electric trailer. And then there's the Pebble Life. The Pebble one is now in production, so they have a little bit more information. They have specifications about what the product is and a bunch of other things. I could also be adding things like electric vans that have been converted into motorhomes or a bunch of different things like that, but my focus is going to be more on the trailer side for this concept. Ideally, you might want to aim for more. You want to have at least 4. It could be substantially more, but the idea is that you want to make sure that you have a broad swath of the market. So if there's high-end or low-end competitors, you want to try and bring all of those pieces in. The big thing that we're doing here is just adding the website so that we have a quick reference. We're kind of talking about what it is. The thing that I really care about is this idea of public perception. So what do people think of the brand or of the product in general? Now, you can go with an assumption, and we'll talk about ways of digging into these specific details as we go. The other thing is that capturing an idea of market share. One of the things that's really interesting is that we tend to do large, medium, small. Where possible, we also tend to track emergent trends, emergent products, because sometimes they've already found a unique niche. They found an opportunity to play in that market. And the more that we understand what they're doing and how they differentiate, the more it can give us some ideas on how we can differentiate our own products. The other thing that we have down here is this idea of indirect customers. So these could be a variety of different things. So again, looking at my fictitious e-trailer conversion, I'm going to be looking at things like, well, what happens if I move to an electric vehicle because that's all I really need? And because of my pain points that I found, I might even be trying to pull in things that make towing easier or help with load distribution or those types of things. So I threw in a load balancing hitch as well. It's not a direct competitor, but it's something I should still be considering in terms of my competitive analysis. If you're doing something that is a replacement to an existing process, record some of the process. Sometimes you'll find that there's things to learn, even from the existing process, that you might not have really considered. And right now, all I really need you to do is just start capturing some of this stuff. Where the real work comes in is when we start moving over to this next tab, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've started to fill this out already. And again, this is all made up. I'm doing an approximation so that you can get a clear understanding of where we're sitting. The idea here is that I'm going to go down, I'm going to list out all of my competitors, and I'm going to add my solution into this last column. What I really want to do in terms of features and benefits, I want to pull in a variety of different things. Hard numbers that you can pull in that are great, like the cost, the value, things that are standard features. When it comes to the world of creating differentiation, a feature and a benefit are two very different things. So features we tend to look at more like tangible items, things you can put on a bullet list, where benefits tend to be the resulting outcome of that. So we do want to try and capture both. And then the very last thing is this idea of perception from the market perspective. So are there things that people really like about the product or really don't like about the product? The more we pull that stuff into here, the better. So this page is something that we're going to come back to later. I'm going to walk through some of the high-level objectives right now. Then I'm going to go through some more of the tools of how we're going to find additional information, and we'll review this sheet again in a little bit. So to start off, what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to start by looking at my competitors' websites. So if I jump over to the Pebble site, I'm just going to start looking for key features, things they talk about. What are the big value propositions? So like even the start point of like, it's electric, it's smart, and you control it with just a touch. Is that language that's important? Is there something that I can talk about? Like to me, this feels like we could talk about ease of control. We can talk about simplicity. There's a bunch of things that we can do. The message changes saying, hey, so you can feel at home. This is about creating a premium experience. And those are things that I want to try and capture. It talks about how it can be used on grid and off grid. What parts of that are beneficial to me? And now we start getting into on the road. Now, of course, this is something where in the previous examples, we've talked about how towing's an issue, how driving and going wherever you want is an issue. They talk specifically about tow assist and range anxiety. These are great bullet points. Now, they're ones that we already assumed, but they're things that we can start pulling out as references and talk about whether or not we have differentiation from them. As we continue to go through this site, we're just going to keep looking for what language are they using? How are they describing the things that they're trying to solve? Magic hitch, great example. Maybe there's something in here that we can leverage and use. So there's a variety of different content that we can pull out of our competitors. And what we're looking for is the type of messaging that they're describing and how they use it so that we can either mirror it if we need to or find differentiations with it. We can look at things like app-driven and talk about whether that's a good or a bad thing for our market. We may want to create differentiation saying that you don't require an app because we're looking for a different demographic, one who's not super tech enabled but really likes the idea of, environmental concern. As we continue to go through the site, we can just keep pulling out more and more references and ensuring that we have all the information about how these people engage and what they interact. As soon as you have something like this, these are great sources of information. This is going to be more about not just the technical specifications, but very much around the sentiment. What are the top things that people are talking about? What language do they use? How can we find differentiation, opportunity, or risks to our product within some of the content that exists here? So as I'm going through and I start pulling out that content, I'm going to keep flipping back to my electric RV competitive analysis sheet. And as I'm going to find new things, I might go in here and talk about how, ease of towing was a big item. And now I can start classifying that. And if I don't have all of the information, that's okay. We can leave some things as blank. But what I really want to do is ensure that every time I find a unique, interesting feature, something that we think might resonate with our brand, that's where we're going to start pulling these things in. So we do want to make sure that we have that blend of both the more hard technical feature requirements as well as a bunch of perception, because we can see if there's an opportunity within this. So as I continue through this, I'm going to keep looking at all of the different websites. I'm going to look at my indirect competitors. I'm going to even pull things out from my do nothing category. Maybe the simplest solution for a lot of my demographic is to use the trailer they have, the truck they have, and make no changes at all. But where's the differentiation? How do we make sure that we know that this is a real opportunity? Or maybe it's that those people just aren't our market. So we're going to use messaging that doesn't necessarily appeal to them, but appeals to the other people who we know are our demographic. In one of the later lessons, we're going to talk through how we can find some of the language and content they're using from an ad perspective. We're going to jump into how they're advertising today and how that's going to influence this sheet. But for now, let's move on. We're going to go from, let's say we've spent a couple hours, we've researched all of our different products, and now we're going to move on to this differentiation, risks, and opportunities. It's going to be related to this other sheet because we have a few categories within here. We have differentiators, risks, opportunities, and must-haves. Must-haves are going to be things that are seen as table stakes within the market. So if I jump back over here, it's something that maybe everybody has. There's going to be, ease of use. Okay, well, this is going to be a requirement. Everybody seems to talk about how it's going to be easy to use. So let's make sure that we have that as a must-have. It's just a core market requirement. If we don't have that, we're going to have to talk about why we don't have it. So for the sake of this, we're going to say that ease of use becomes one of our table stakes. If for some reason our ease of use was really, really low or that it was very difficult, we would move that more into the risk side. So it could become both a risk and a differentiator, because we could talk about how the risk is that it's not easy to use, but we're going to talk about why it's not easy to use because of some advanced feature, some value proposition that goes way beyond that. And then it's going to move into a differentiator. While I'm over here, I'm going to start talking about some of our differentiators. So we've identified environmental impact and vehicle upgrade as two of our big things. When we start talking about vehicles, in this case, we're using it as both the truck or the trailer. Do I need to upgrade either of those? Because there's always a cost associated with it. Environmental impact could be both from the perspective of gas mileage as well as, removing another vehicle. When we flip back to our good, bad, and ugly here, you could see that we've gone through this and we have this vehicle upgrade column. So these three are all vehicle upgrades. Now, these ones don't have a vehicle upgrade, but they're probably not our demographic. But fundamentally, they're also not solving the same problem we are. They're not going to help us move into the environmental impact side. So we can use that as a clear differentiator within our product. When we start looking at things like risks, when we jump back here, we can see here that from an installation perspective, all of these are listed as easy or not that hard, and we have that hard marker. So everybody else is green or yellow, and we're red. Where that comes into play is that we can start talking about how that's a risk for us, but maybe we can start mitigating it. It's an important consideration. If I look at how we have it listed, we could say ours currently has a complicated setup process, but perhaps I could talk about how there's an opportunity to do a one-time installation, or you could use a service provider, or maybe we have agreements with service providers in order to do this installation. Risks are not something that are overwhelming and prevent you from moving forward, but they're there to consider how you're going to mitigate them in market. I would much rather you're facing your own challenges here way before you're in market than having a consumer complain and having to deal with it while it's live in market. The last category we've identified here is opportunities. So I have this one listed as prestige, and we'll go over and figure out why. So for us, we have something where our bigger competitors definitely have that notion of prestige. They're products that are well branded, they sit out in market, and we don't really know. We're kind of in this yellow space of like, maybe it's a risk, right? We have to something that we have to figure out. So we've moved it over here as an opportunity just to be able to identify that perhaps our solution, which is currently hidden, it's an installed product, maybe we want to add a badge. Is this something where we want to try and promote our product to talk about how exclusive it is, how valuable it is? It's the idea of, are you wearing a Rolex because you love watches or because you're trying to make a statement? So we have a bunch of different things that we can play with. In the next few lessons, we're going to talk about how we're going to add to this sheet. And in the end, we're going to summarize how we can turn this back into some testing and meaningful metrics and turning that into unique market opportunities. All right, so that's an overview of the sheet. Hopefully it's clear. If you have any questions, reach out for us and we'd be happy to help. The next thing we're going to do is start talking about different ways we're going to collect additional information, adding that back into the sheet. And then in the end, we're going to talk about how we're going to turn this into something that we can test with our market.